Right.
It's a little extra.
Okay, so we've had the presentation side of the meeting tonight. Let's not do that. So now we're going to have more of a discussion topic and we've got two old hands, shall we say?
That's not very nice, Paul.
Sorry. One old hand, one young guy.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse. You're going to record this or not, Alan?
So what we're going to talk about now then is the BIM Execution Plan. Who does it, where, when, how, and various other topics besides. So there is a general kind of set of slides that are going to guide us through this discussion, and various arguments and counter-arguments for the process. But please, this is where we want you to be very vocal about how the process works for you or doesn't work for you, and how you would like to see things moving in the future. So, I'm going to hand over to Ray and Raoul.
Okay, right. We're going to do an Ashley and Pudsey. I'm not saying who's which. No one watches Britain's Got Talent. Okay. Just before we start, Alan wanted to make a point about the videos that get taken of these sessions, and they come in two parts, Alan, because of the size.
It's just that, a lot of people downloaded part 2 of David Light's presentation last time, but didn't pick up part 1. It was on the next page. So if you kind of think it was disjointed, go back and pick up the first part.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, we want, as Paul says, we want to try and get a bit of a discussion going on what people are doing around BIM execution plans. The jobs come in. We're going to make a start. How do we do it? Okay. First of all, show of hands. How many people here consider themselves a BIM manager? How many? And how many of you were CAD managers before you became a BIM manager? So that is about the same. Okay? So it's quite interesting. Out of those guys, how many of you have written a BIM execution plan? Or who has written a BIM execution plan? All right, okay. So in terms of the roles and responsibilities about who does this, who do we think should write the BIM execution plan? I want some feedback.
BIM coordinator.
BIM coordinator. Anybody else? Is it for the project or is it for your particular piece of work? Who does it?
Maybe the project manager.
Project manager?
Yeah. For the whole project, encompassing the contractor and the design team.
Project manager? Anybody else?
It's a collaborative effort. It's
Got that?
all of the above.
I like that. That's really good. We've got a client here, Gatwick. Does the client create the BIM execution plan?
They
Contribute to it.
Sorry?
They contribute to it.
Who leads it? Do we think the client should lead it?
He needs to lead it because it feeds into everybody's appointments.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And this is the sort of thing we want. So if we look at some of the work we did down at Gatwick, where we had BIM execution plans coming out from the client, coming to all the stakeholders, we're all filling in our own BIM execution plan.
That's good in a perfect world where the client understands BIM.
Does the client understand BIM? Andy, do you understand BIM?
I can't comment possibly. We are learning.
You're learning.
I guess we are all going through the learning curve. But the key question that we need to find a solution of that, we all do BIM execution plan to a degree in some form or other, and do we have BIM execution plans per discipline in a given project, or do we have a single BEP for a project? And does it become part of the overall project execution plan, or is it an independent entity which gets referred into PEP or project execution plan? So those kind of questions, I think we as a group need to, find some solutions and answers tonight.
What, in a minute? Okay.
No,
we've only got half an hour, so okay. But I'm interested in the project manager. Okay, maybe the overall project manager and the collaboration team and the client. For me, it's a combination of all these things. And my perception of what's happening with the government is that the BIM execution plan is moving away slightly from what we may consider to be quite technology based to more of how we manage all of the information for the project, of which the model may only be just a small part. Any comment? Would anybody like to comment on that?
I'd agree with that.
You'd agree with it?
Yeah.
Yeah? So it seems now that we're talking about the bigger picture and that flow of information, and in particular when working in a collaborative environment as to what piece of information, if we got an architect here and I'm the structures guy, I need his information by a certain time in order for me to do my job. So this flow of information is much bigger than how we manage a load of Revit files.
If this execution plan is coming out from the client, at what point does a document which is meant to form agreement become just another contractual obligation listing out what deliverables you will deliver? Because surely there needs to be a voluntary agreement aspect to a BIM execution plan.
And certainly a BIM execution plan is negotiation. The client may have certain requirements. The professional design team may have other requirements for bringing together information. BIM does change the playing field quite a lot in what information you need from our separate disciplines. And then we take that on to contractor, manufacturer, supplier, facilities manager. They all need to input because we can't actually start modelling a true BIM model until we understand where we've got to get to. It's like going on a walk and not knowing where you're going.
But at the same time, the BIM, by its very nature, has to develop. It has a lifespan. And the BIM execution plan surely has to follow that lifespan, because you cannot dictate on day one how you're going to put your model together based upon what the facility manager wants from it at the end of the project. So the whole process has to, surely there's never a finished execution plan. It's never finished.
It's always evolving document. It's a dynamic document, like a design development. You never know what your building is going to look like based on the brief, but it evolves. And as the design evolves and the project progresses, we see the BIM execution plan evolves as well and adapts to the project parameters. That's right.
And an interesting thing is that you look at the development timescale of a lot of the projects that we're all involved with. We could be talking years, decade for the Shard, for example.
Yeah.
So the pace of technology changing over that time is going to impact the execution plan as well, and how everybody fits into it.
Which is where it's very important to have something like this, a framework put in place to manage those expectations of a project, especially when it spans, for multiple years, because things may, and it does vary from year to year, even in terms of technology, how fast technology evolves. So it is important to have a framework in place.
Just a thought, do we actually want to specify one person owns it? Is it not a case of, like you say, it's an evolving document that maybe ownership is transferred at various milestones throughout the project itself? That it starts maybe with the design team and then is passed down at the relevant stage to the contractor, who then becomes the BIM coordinator, who manages and owns that execution.
That's the way it's been perceived by government, and that it is a thing that evolves. And the CIC have defined their specific stages, and that it is an evolving document, as people said, and ownership of that will then change through the various stages. Lead designer, who is the lead designer, that will then change necessarily throughout the stages.
But getting back to the client, surely we need to, well, it's a cliche, begin with the end in mind. Do we need to know what that facility is going to be used for in terms of FM if we're serious about the full level 2 BIM?
Yeah,
Well, from my manager's view, there are many managers, I have many managers, is that there's two things. One is the project execution plan and the BIM execution plan must be one document because they don't want it drifting off into some sort of technical battle. And the second thing, we have to have a clear deliverables out of that are not technology related. The BIM standard is the technology relation. The execution plan is about deliverables and what we're doing with it to produce quality engineering or quality architecture. So therefore, the execution plan talks about when we're going to deliver the design review and what formats we're going to deliver in, although we're not in the lucky position of being a decade to do some of those tasks. But it's really a tool from the client side to be able to us to competitively break down parts of the design to get best advantage for us.
So how do we embrace the technology in that then, Andy? We can't ignore the technology, surely.
But I think there is a situation where you are mixing the technology and the processes up as one thing, and they are separate. They're separate issues. I think in my job I don't use the word BIM or CAD in my job title because that's the efficiency I do to use in my job. I work in a structural discipline and that reflects my expertise in a certain job area. Whether I draw that on a piece of toilet paper or I use Revit, it's just a tool and it's an efficiency and it needs to be separated from the process.
But then when you start to then use BIM for design and you've got information embedded with your models and the like, if you can't pass that information down the design program, it's effectively lost, which completely negates the point of modelling it in the first place. You might as well have just drawn it on the back of toilet paper.
Is that not one of the purposes of the BIM execution plan, to identify what the communication role is?
Absolutely, but then that's where it becomes technical.
Yeah.
But BIM uses is not technical.
Yeah, it's just a tool.
Yeah, but then you can say use one package that might not talk to another. It does if you're relying on that first package containing information you want to pass down the line. That's the problem.
You need to, if you know that somebody's using a particular bit of software that means that you cannot communicate, then you need to know that on day one, not at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
You see, I think that one of the things is the BIM execution plan should define BIM uses. BIM can be as wide or as narrow as we look. Like everyone kind of thinks it should be this all-embracing wonder thing. Kind of get over that because it's not. It can mean different things to different people, and that's why I think the BIM execution plan should document BIM uses.
But also there's got to be a timeline to that, because you can't put expectations upon the content of that BIM that are too far-fetched for today's deliverable.
David's right in what he's saying there, to elaborate. So the BIM changes with what stage of the design or construction you're building. And if you put that in, uses data drop, then it means different things to that. But I'm opening this up to a challenge, not because I believe it, but I could well be wrong. But the execution plan is about deliverables and process. And the technical part is in the standard, which it refers to, pertaining to that technical, how we produce it over that time.
But there's no standard that's going to dictate, this is rather a question rather than a statement, but is there a standard, does your standard therefore dictate you will use this piece of software?
It alludes to more or less.
So I mean, which is fine, if your standard is strong enough to say you will use this and you will use this, therefore the communication is known.
Yeah.
But in most contracts that's not the case, and the standard doesn't tell you to use BIM, but it doesn't tell you to use, you will all use Revit, therefore you will all be happy.
Okay, so there's two hats. At Gatwick, where we use Revit for the buildings and Civil 3D for the outside, it is specifically a preclaimer to that's what you must use. With a Bechtel hat on, I'd say what we want to do is take that away and use an IFC or whatever in that technical standard to describe exactly what we need. So that's a we're kind of, I don't think we're there yet. We're certainly not there yet in our knowledge as a client of knowing how to data manage such an operation. But that's where it's going, in my view.
And you need to kind of understand why Gatwick chose Revit as a platform, we got into long discussions about whether we should dictate a technology. But actually, once we went around and interviewed and discussed, spoke to all their framework partners, they were all using Revit anyway. So it became a point that actually, if you built the standard around the particular technology, don't get me wrong, I got kicked a few hard times by dictating the technology, but it seems to suit Gatwick fine. Now, most clients are kind of leaving it fairly open-ended, but by being a bit more prescriptive, it means that they get stuff delivered in a way that will help them.
But I think in some respects then, this is an unusual case, and I think part of that standard needs to come into the BIM execution plan for most people, because there needs to be a technical discussion that's had about how people will communicate with you. And unless that dictation of what software is being used, it needs to be documented somewhere, and it needs to be tested and verified, and it's, the documentation is there of how we're going to communicate and what the ramifications are. So is the BIM execution plan potentially not somewhere where that can go?
I think certainly until we get an open source data standard that actually works properly, interoperably between a multitude of platforms, we do have to dictate the technologies. Otherwise we're just throwing data away.
Having dictated the technology, what about the use of that technology?
Well, that definitely the usage, and that's why, ignore the technology. BIM usage should go in BIM execution.
Yeah.
In terms of levels of development. And
you're talking there about usage as in what the BIM is going to be used for, rather than to use the technology.
Or both. What's it going to be?
That's why I think the BIM execution plan sets expectations.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the formation of the Penn State one. If you look at it, they did their research, found 25 uses for a BIM. Sorry. And then at the beginning, you scope out what you're going to try and do with the BIM, and you use that to shape your process. It's a good method of driving a plan.
Yeah, we see lots of PQQs coming through it, and they've gone well. And they've obviously been on people's blogs and been to plenty of the seminars that have happened over the last 18 months and thought, wow, this is pretty crap, this is really cool stuff. We want all of it. Good luck with that, because we can give you some stuff, but the other stuff you're going to have to kind of pay for. And I think that people are giving, and it's not about increasing fees, so I'm not talking about that, but there's a certain amount I think you can give away and a certain amount you're going to need to charge extra for.
I don't know whether it would be appropriate for this debate, but then it also might change where some of that fee falls within the industry. So where we specifically as designers, we have a certain amount of responsibility to make sure things work. If we then go to the degree, model that all up in 3D, and that contains all the flow rates, and you've got QS information you can pull out of it, and we're just going to give it to a contractor, they've munched through a huge amount of our fee for all of their benefit, or all of the client's benefit, but we might not necessarily get anything more out of it. So how that feeds into this, and what you're actually going to pass down the line, is a significant part, for me, of the execution plan. In what information is the model going to contain, and specifically if you apply it to, say, architecture and MEP from a Revit perspective, you can model up your Revit architecture in such a way that it's completely useless to try and pull rooms or spaces out of. But we might rely on that to do some of our design and run hosting information and so on and so forth. If you don't define that technically, then that's completely lost.
Yeah, specification of the deliverables from it starting at a particular time in the process.
Which is kind of what Andy was suggesting from a client perspective.
I had something recently with you talked about the usage stuff, and we were given one of the QSs on the job wanted our Revit model out. Fine, no problem. But what they actually wanted, they've got a piece of software that does costing from DWFs, and right, okay, so read the spec through. So there's a small bit in the thing about saying, right, but DWF is marking up software, because it doesn't transfer, Revit doesn't transfer share parameters to DWF. The QS was expecting us to basically go to our Revit model and swap out all the share parameters for project parameters. to which we just told him there's just no way on practical earth we're going to ever do that. So I mean, it all went quiet in the end, but it just goes to show that kind of one, you know, you've got this works for them, but it would never work for anyone else, because I think they've been sold on a certain route that, yeah, this software will do a good job for them, but actually DWF is not, that's not what it's for. It's what Navisworks is for. It's not, you know, and you get those kind of technical problems as well. So.
Yeah, this is where we need to define the use, as David said, you know, and the goals and objective right from the beginning, onset. However many you know from the onset, of course, you know, things will evolve. Different stakeholders will join the team, and there will be different needs for usage maybe down the line. So
that's where we find the best value in defining or debating the usage at the beginning, not defining it, because like most people said, it grows. But you can then start to have discussions about, okay, they're the users, they define a certain set of processes, and that involves then a series of work. Who's going to be responsible for that work? And over 3 or 4 workshops in defining an execution plan, you can very quickly get to a stage of understanding the volume of work that those very early assumptions give the rest of the team. Then you can start to have sensible adult discussions with your client about fee profile, about fee amounts, and about responsibilities and appointments. And you can be doing this through feasibility when people are still sketching on how
so in a way, BEP gives you an opportunity to review and evaluate your usage of BIM, and then gives us an opportunity to sit down with client again and say, you know, look, this is what we're going to do, or maybe you're expecting, and it may fit or it may not fit with your traditional appointment or contract. So, but you have a vehicle to do that.
Talking of fees, how many companies here? Is a leading question. You're putting a bid together. How many companies would charge more for BIM?
Depends what BIM you're talking about.
Depends whether they're asking for it.
But if they're asking for a BIM solution,
we've got to be more prescriptive over it. What do you want from your BIM?
What do you want from it?
Where's exactly. So
if we're asking for Toby, we'll put our hands up.
I mean, the dimension. You know, we talk about Kobe and the eye in BIM and the government's aspirations. Surely that's part of the rationale to get the technology right. We can't just enter into this in our silos of working. We've got to get that technology and that interoperability and that collaboration right, surely.
To sort of answer your question by picking up what David was saying, the way we deal with this is BIM per se is at no extra cost.
Yeah.
Then we'll give you a pick list of extras that you may want from the BIM that does involve extra work for us, and we will charge for it. And we'll try and demonstrate the benefits you will get from each of those BIM extras or BIM wins, whatever you want to call them. And the client can then say, okay, I'd like that, I don't need that, I would like that. And that is the way we put our proposal together. Just producing a Revit model to make drawings ourselves, which is just modelling, we wouldn't charge any extra for.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? It's a bit cheeky, but so I'm.
You can be cheeky.
I'm a cost manager, right? So I can understand what the chap's talking there about the whole DWF thing. But I'm in a situation now on a project where we're buying it. So we've got two-stage tender process going on, and the main contractor's coming back, and he's had the benefit of all the Revit models, and he's saying, oh, by the way, it's going to cost kaching extra amount of money to use the Revit models during our construction period. And I'm like, hang on a minute, this doesn't make sense. And I just wonder if anybody else has had any experiences of that. And
that sounds like taking the Michael.
Doesn't it? Absolutely.
We've just had a direct experience with a key client of ours who has used BIM through the development of a tender, and through his procurement of the two-stage tender, the second part, driving the price, they've reduced their risk by 50%.
Really?
In real money. And they used BIM to drive that down. They said, you know, we've done this, we've invested in it, we expect you to want to see that come back.
But if you're going to take someone else's model on, how do you validate that model's fit for use?
I think that's part of the conundrum. I think perhaps they haven't got that experience yet. Yeah.
Can I just say, I'll add to your conversation. So we're taking tenders in that we've supplied the stage before design in Revit 2, and 2 of the tenderers are coming back with pretty near the same cost, and one isn't, and the one hasn't been using the model schedules. So that's quite telling as well. What will that do to the industry? But the second thing, there is no legal precedence for what we're doing. And people like me will side on, well, we always give drawings away and they're always for information only. This is the Lewis question here. But what happens when you actually give away the model and the model is wrong? And they're costing from that.
Okay, we'll crack on. I think there's some good. We'll be here tomorrow. Okay.
Andy, if it's 10 metres wrong, then you've got you up shit creek. But if it's only 100 millimetres wrong, live with it.
Okay, so this presentation has been broken down to some of the things that you might find in the BIM execution plan, and very much based on around the Penn State, which has got quite a bit of traction in the UK. Some of the stuff the AEC have been doing, and interestingly, when we met up this week to have a look at this presentation, our work was quite similar, wasn't it? Really, so that's encouraging that there's a common language developing, which is pretty cool. So what do we see going in the BIM execution plan as a start there?
To start with, it would be useful to have a couple of pages, brief introduction about why you have this BEP on a CAT week or on any given project. So it's outlining, if you go back to the slide, it's an introduction of the BEP. Some key bullet points, intent. What's the intent of this BEP? Is it to capture technology decisions only? Is it to capture other deliverables decisions only, or some kind of? So it's capturing those decisions in the introduction. Just some bullet points, and then next we should have some definitions, because we use a lot of we love acronyms. So we use a lot of acronyms. But when someone picks up that BIM execution plan and goes through that, and they read MEA and LOD and what have you. So it's useful to have some definition at the beginning before we dive into real nitty-gritty of BEP.
Anyone got a definition of BIM at the moment? What's the current flavour of the month?
The only important letter in BIM is the middle one. The first and the last ones could stand for anything, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But where's the government coming from now?
Yeah, BIM is the latest.
COVID.
It is some.
AIM, whatever.
AIM.
I'm trying to avoid the phrase altogether.
Yeah, okay, good stuff.
Just talking of acronyms, is it BEP or BXP?
Anything.
BXP.
BEP or anything. It's just I just use BEP, but it could be. There isn't a.
Okay, let's crack on. You can have that discussion in the poll, I think. All right. So as Raoul was saying, some overall information about the project. So we've got a clear definition of the project. We're not going to dig too deep into that sort of thing. Who are the key contacts? Who are the people? Who are we collaborating with? Even internally and externally. In large organisations, you might not know that another department is working on the same project as you, or another discipline. So, trying to break down those silos and understanding where the leadership is, and who the key contacts are for all the different disciplines, I think is quite cool. Roles and responsibilities. This has come from the PAS, and Carl, you've been...
PAS or PANS?
PANS.
Yeah,
PANS. Remember, we're from PAS 1192, and you won't find a BIM manager position in this lot at all. So there are.
You don't have clients either.
Well, we have employers representative, but this is really just to communicate. Everybody know what the PAS 1192 is? No? You're sitting on the working party, aren't you?
I was sat on a part of one of the working parties.
Okay. Do you want to?
Public available specification.
Yeah.
1192.
1192. It's not a free version of BS 1192.
Importantly, we're talking about BS 1192 Part 2,
Yes, Part
which
2.
is the PAS.
Yeah.
There was BS 1192 2007, upon which the 1192 Part 2 builds and works in. Can you press shut down
Right.
later, or it's going to kick off?
Part 3.
Yeah. The idea is it's about how we exchange information in an organised way.
Yeah. So we're back to the information and the project manager, or the project management of the BIM, the big picture here. All right.
Can I ask why the cost consultant, QS?
Don't ask me to explain this. I'm just communicating this as part of the PAS, and I'm sure a lot of people will not agree with some of these roles and responsibilities.
Most clients I know care an awful lot how much their buildings cost.
Yeah.
I would have thought should be in there somewhere.
Yeah, it should be in there, absolutely. I wonder as well, there's a thing about, I think the CIC has done a scope of services recently. I'm not sure if it's draft or final, but I wonder if that sets out any of this, because I know there was something there about information manager.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you'll notice amongst a lot of the professional institutions is the scope of services. Documents are flying out at the moment. I mean, certainly there's REBA, BIM overlay, there's CIC one, which is probably going to take primacy, there's BUSRIA one, there's CIBSI, there's a lot of different scopes of services. I think the PAS itself doesn't necessarily leach into that area, but I think as a few people have already pointed out, it's not a complete document, which is why it's a PAS and not a BS.
Okay, so the purpose of that really is just to communicate some of the current thinking of roles and responsibilities, which in many respects are maybe slightly different to our traditional methods of working. Why is this going in that direction?
Press the wrong button.
Just to answer that question about where the QS would be, I imagine that they would sit up
And what?
employees' representatives, that
If you go back, there was task teams. Each task team is different discipline: architect, structure, M&E, cost consultant.
Sorry, guys. BIM goals and objectives. I think getting back to not quite on the BIM uses yet, but what's the objective of the BIM? So that may come from the client. What are you looking to get out of it? Multidisciplinary, fully coordinated models. So we define up front what the purpose of the BIM is, and looking at that from the overall project perspective. So I would say that's got to come from the client. If we're looking at even the Penn State, it's about the goals of the project, would be my view.
I guess there would be some other discipline-specific goals feeding into this process as well, because clients may have some certain specific goals out of the BIM process or project, certain deliverables and what have you. But then we, as let's say designer, would have some goals as well to achieve out of our BIM models as well as a process, as deliverables or schedules or some sort of thing. So I think it's going to be collaborative. Decisions.
So what we haven't got on there, if I was the client, one of the goals of the project could be to take this into construction and into FM and understand what we're going to do around the FM. So that could be a goal of the project. So we need to know that up front. Okay, things might mature along the way and evolve and change along the way, but we need to know surely we need to know that that's a goal of the project.
Is this something that the lead design consultant should be advising on?
Sorry?
Is this something the lead design consultant should be advising on? Because the client might not be BIM aware.
Yeah.
But you might be employed as the lead design consultant, so you should be bringing this forward to say, we should be doing this as a project to deliver you efficiencies throughout the project.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, just on clash detection, I'm just kind of probing that one. Would the BIM execution plan go into the specification of that? So let's say builders' work holes.
Yeah.
So are we going to put builders' work holes in all our concrete to make sure it's clash free? So is that part of like the final chapter or something?
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
We need to specify just specify the level of expectation from Clash, so that if you know that you're only going to model pipes over a certain size, then that's part of the BIM execution plan, so that you know that anything below a certain size is schematic, and any holes need to be identified, the ownership of those holes, who's in control of cutting those holes through load-bearing walls. So it's not just about the information, but also who is going to develop it and who's going to own it.
So we're coming on to Dave's bit here about the BIM uses. What are we actually using the BIM for? Are we using it for struct energy? Are we using it for design authoring? Are we using it for lighting analysis? We need to define this and understand this up front, so we've got a clear way forward as to how we're going to maximise the BIM. So again, this is coming from Penn State, really trying to identify what bit of use that you're going to use the BIM for. Ralph, this is your... And at what stage, which is important here. Which process or use at what stage?
It's very important to know at what point of time you're going to kick off your BIM process or what have you. And most of the time with Standard, let's say, we started maybe, let's say, planning phase or stage D, stage C, or after stage B for some projects, depending on the contract type, appointments, and contractual obligations and what have you. So it is important to capture these basic decisions at what point of time you're going to kick off your BIM process. And so that we know what to expect from you at stage C, stage D, and so forth.
Yeah. BIM models, love it. Okay, so really, it's a good one, and really, back to the client here. What is the deliverable? Sorry, Andy, but what is the deliverable? What are we delivering? Are we delivering drawings? Are we delivering PDFs? Are we delivering models? What does the client want? So really identifying that up front and having clarity around that. And it looks quite simple there, but it's quite a complex subject, because if we're delivering to the client a model, what's he going to do with it? What format does it need to be in? How is he going to use that information? How is he going to compile it again and put it back together so that he can use it?
Has anybody actually been asked to deliver a fully coordinated BIM? Yeah.
We were recently asked on one of the projects to issue SB model, SB BIM model.
What did your solicitor say about that?
SB record, what we call it.
He wished him luck.
Model. So we had to sit down with the client and explain them, because they may have come across some of the government initiatives about BIM and level 2 and what have you, and how they can benefit. But they didn't have any clue whatsoever about what they're asking. So they say, oh, we want level 2 BIM models, that's in the completion BIM models, at the completion. And we said, yeah, fine, we can provide that with these and these caveats. And similarly, subcontractors, roofing, cladding, and other contractors also came around and put their caveats in as well. But the intention is right. They wanted to use, because it was shell and core project, they wanted to pass it on that model to other fit-out contractors, in the future. So they wanted that Revit models, IFC models, Navisworks models for their use down the line, not necessarily for FM at these times. They don't understand how to, and I don't think anybody does, how to take that forward. But
just as a general kind of idea, what implications did that have on your fee?
Well, we secured additional fee for that. Additional fee for that. We said,
sorry, no additional fee or an additional fee?
We secured additional fee.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So when client after, I think it was after a certain, I can't remember when, but when client came around and said, we want you, when we delivered design BIM model, they said we want you to develop this model through the construction phase as well, and deliver as completion models with certain tolerances and caveats, of course. and client was happy to pay additional fee for that.
Well, what kind of procurement was that? Was that like a traditional, or was it DNB? DNB. So that would have been like a contractor's cost. So it's something that it would have been a kind of balance, I imagine.
Yeah,
the interesting thing might be if that happened on a traditional project, there'd be a saving on the contract sum that would have to be paid for, well, paid to whoever was doing the model to.
But in any case, I think as David mentioned earlier, and you raised the question about the cost element of doing BIM. I think we are right to say that it would cost additional if you require this, and this. Otherwise, why would I bother?
So how many site visits and monitoring of construction did you do to actually make sure that what was designed was what got built?
Now that was interesting. We had a clause in our BIM Execution Plan.
A cop-out or a clause?
Or caveat or whatever we call it, that said that contractor is responsible for providing as-built information to the team, and also contractor is responsible for validating that the as-built models are in sync with the information that they provide. So at the end, the contractor was responsible for checking and validating and what have you. Yes, we were doing site visits.
Are they changing your models, etc., etc.? So contractors come along, installations come along, and you don't know, 6 pipes, and they've got 4 pipes. Is the contractor coming along and changing the drawings and providing that back to you?
It's just usual markups or sketches and what have you, and then individual disciplines will update their respective models.
Right. Okay.
Because we were still in a federated model environment, not lucky enough like Carl or other multidiscipline. So there were different companies doing MEPs and architecture and roofing contractor, cladding contractor, and the ultimate responsibility was contractors' responsibility to make sure that the record models or as-built models we provide meets the information that they provide. And if they don't provide information on time, or if they don't provide information at all, then we don't update model, as simple as that.
And does the specification behind those caveats, is that based around scale? So what I mean is, are you saying that this floor slab is accurate to the scale of?
Yeah. It is mainly around those LODs things that we would come in a minute. It's you get up to LOD 300 or LOD 400, and you get build up in a wall or in a floor slab, but you don't get every nuts and bolts on a cladding packet, for example. It's up to 1:50 level of scale or 1:20 level of scale sort of model. But again, as a client was new to this process, he was quite happy for us to hold their hands and take them through the process and say, this is what you can get at this moment in time with the technology.
Right. Pub shut at 11, so we've got to move on. Okay. Right, we'll be here all day. All right. Again, coming from just a quick bit of information about the PAS and the alignment of the CI, all the stages across industry. So rail, highways and transportation, RIBA, BISRIA are all they're trying to get this alignment, and it's not confirmed yet, my understanding, but it will be something like 1 to 7 stages.
They've agreed to 1 to 7 stages.
They've done that
then
now.
How the individual professions adjust their stages, and it's something that developed design some of them may be renamed, but would be 1 to 7. It's agreeing the terminology across the.
Okay, so just quickly looking at this. This used to be called data drops, and it's now called information exchange points, if you like. So these are sort of milestones along the way where the project team will be expected to deliver against a certain criteria.
Don't you find it very useful that they've redefined everything that everybody's already aware of?
That's the whole point. And even the way you read it, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
You go anti-clockwise, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to justify that consultancy fee.
The BIM Execution Plan, in the AEC group, we still see the opportunity for the BIM Execution Plan, and BIM standards very much from a technical perspective, the PAS doesn't really cover the technical aspect.
And also, just to clarify, we're not trying to sort of position the AEC BIM Execution Plan as being a competitor to the Project Execution Plan. What we see is, the way that we've gone with the AEC is we've produced a checklist of items that need to be included in a BIM Execution Plan. They may be covered by a Project Execution Plan, but if not, they need to be covered somewhere. So that's the line we're taking. We're not saying it has to be a separate document. We're saying that these points need to be covered somewhere in your documentation, whether that is PEP or BXP or
wherever.
Other acronyms.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what we have done, following the Penn State idea, once you've identified your BIM uses, is to understand where that fits into the whole process. So this particular project, we've gone for 30, 60, 90 milestones, and trying to understand what we're going to do at what point. So here, what we're doing we're authoring design models, we're doing 3D coordination, and we're doing clash detection. That's really the key objectives. So having defined when we're going to do that, we would then break that down into a little bit of detail as to what that process is for doing each of those uses or each of those tasks. So if you get everybody familiar with the Penn State BIM Execution Plan? They've got a whole rake of templates in there that you can pick up and develop to suit the project, and it's a good starting point. Getting back to information flow, this is something that we're looking at how we're managing change, so that we get a lot of design coordination up front before we even actually touch any of the models. So there's a bit of workflow there to try and capture that before we update our models, and we are following BS 1192, Work in Progress, Shared, Published, and this is the route which we would take to get this information into the shared area. Mr. David Light.
Informally, one of the discussions that's taking place at the moment is making that you have to pay. Everyone know what BS 1192 is. Everyone has to pay for it. Okay, but if possible, it may be made free. So that's still in discussion, but they recognise that there's a certain number of documents that need to be released free, and they're in negotiations about making BS 1192 2007 free.
So the communication here really is to try and look at that information. This is an example of how we're going to, we are managing change, okay, on a particularly tightly controlled project, fully multi-disc, and we want to ensure that people are only working on shared, validated information. That's why I've asked the question, how do you validate a model? How do we check a model? So in BS 1192 language, we're talking more about the exchange of models, but how do we check that model? How do we verify the model is fit for use across the team? Anyway, think about that sort of process of how you're going to handle the information on your project. We've all seen this. This is coming out the AEC standards, the shared repository, working off the central files and our local files, and agreeing on that process of getting information into the shared area. Probably more importantly is how do we communicate to the team what we've actually changed? Probably the most important thing.
I think we're going from process to right down to technology now. As some of the decisions that we should capture as part of the execution plan is units and origin. Obvious, units is obvious, but origin, I've seen many projects in the past that it's so trivial. Origin, yeah, project origin. Like we all know that we're working on one common site. But then when you overlay drawings or models, one's in Australia, one is in America, and it may sound trivial, but it is true that this is very important to capture and communicate in a right way, so that everybody right down to the shop floor understands that where my project origin is and orientation is. So it is important to capture that. Model breakdown is obvious.
Very quickly, Rob, on your project origin, you missed a dimension.
What did I?
Elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Z should be in. It is in the text. We don't. Yeah, there should be a Z there, but it is in the project execution text. That if you are changing your Z position for any reason, then you should document that too. I mean, this is mainly because in any CAD tools, particularly 3D modeling tools like Max, Rhino, Revit, or any other 3D tools, you will get some inaccuracies when you model something far away from the software's internal origin. So you have to move your project data as close as possible to the software origin point.
Or redefine the point, or define the point given its XY.
Right, so
when we talk about standards, that's millimetres there. Is that?
I say that's technical, it should be in the standard, not in the project execution.
The units and origin.
Yep.
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 No, I think as long as we capture these decisions we make somewhere in a project document, it doesn't matter where it lives. It's either in a project execution plan or BIM execution plan or ER's requirement document, wherever. But as long as we capture some of the technical, it's key. And then the next one is the model breakdown. Again, we don't know how many subcontractors models are going to be, or how you're going to handle highly detailed model at stage E or stage F. But to start with, it's useful to know that how you're going to break down your models, and of course this will evolve and may change as you go along the project life cycle.
Can I ask a dark question on that one? We've done elements of that on varying sizes of the project. How often is that kept up to date? Because I know with all the best intentions in the world, you go through and say, this is how many models we're going to have, this is what we're going to do, and then you get into the crux of the job, there's only so many people working on it, and it just goes to expletive.
Yep.
Well, we religiously update that. And I strongly advise that we should, because this is key. If you don't know how many models you're going to work with, then how are you going to collaborate and coordinate? If you have like 25, 30 models, then it is important for the whole team to know that we are in this situation. We have 25 federated project models, and this is how we're going to work. Now, let's say at stage D, you may have 5 models, and after stage D, you decided to split one MEP model into 5 MEP models, then it is important for the team to know that you split your model into 5 different models. So,
well, following BS, the workflow, we do need to control the issue of models, and you may maintain a model register. Who maintains a model register? No one?
Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it. A lot of times it's just this sort of thing you tend to document at the beginning, and then after that it was very informal. But
we're going to be issuing models, working in a collaborative environment moving forward. We're going to be having to work with those models.
Also, again, it comes down to the responsibility of update. Who owns this document and who is responsible for updating and communicating with the team. It's key. LOD again.
We've got 10 minutes max. Okay.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
You capture,
not for this, for the to finish. Yeah. Okay.
LOD. We capture some of the LOD descriptions and the important thing is the authorized use. When somebody says, "Oh, I'm modeling my floor slab at LOD 200," what is its authorized use, or what is it used for? It can be used for. So that's important, and that's, I put all the question marks. I'm not saying that 300 could be used for visualization or scheduling. It's only you can tell when you're modeling, or you can decide as a team that my 300 floor slab would be used for scheduling or something else. Next one. Okay, once you define LOD metrics, then you define responsibility metrics. Who is going to model what? Obvious one, but there are certain gray areas, like who models structural walls, and do we both have structural walls? Who owns the door, and who holds the door and the structural wall and stuff like that. So it's a key one. Responsibility metric is absolutely key in this process. Next one. Obvious one we're going to issue. It's useful to, of course, this is this keeps changing as well, model delivery schedule, but it's good to know to start with that when you're going to issue fortnightly, weekly, monthly, or what. Next one. Meetings, again, this is as and when needed, or useful to capture some of the key meeting requirements in BIM execution plan, so the team is aware that we need to meet to discuss something, in the future.
Interestingly, in putting together a bid for some of Gatwick work there, the bid team, the first kick-off meeting was with the project director. It was titled BIM kick-off meeting, but it was actually the bid kick-off meeting. So they were using BIM as a bit of leverage on the bid to get that BIM-centric feel to the project.
Next one, coordination. This is another important one. How are you going to do 3D to 3D BIM coordination, 2D to 3D BIM coordination as well? As we stand now in the industry, we still have 2D DWGs as our the official deliverables. If you're linking 2D drawings to your 3D model, you need to establish some basic protocols so everybody knows how we are doing class detections, Navis, Solibri, or Revit to Revit. If so, is it visual, manual, or automatic, API, or any other business? And the important one is clash reporting. Once you find a clash, how are you going to report to the team and get an audit trail on that clash, that it's resolved, or if someone is working on that, or what have you? So that establishing that process is very important. Next one. Model management. Again, is there a project-wide model manager? If so, then what are the responsibilities of project-wide model manager versus your discipline-specific model manager? It's useful to capture some of those responsibilities here in the BIM execution plan as well.
Very quickly on that, Paul's working with an agency that's looking at job titles and roles and responsibilities for BIM. Some quite interesting debate on that one. Okay, QA check model validation. Now, this is interesting on how we actually validate that model. What can we do to ensure that when we're working together as a team, that the models are reliable? It's a really big subject. I don't think we've got an answer at the moment, but there are things that we can do to minimise the risk, if you like, and that's why we're asking Carl about model validation when we exchange information. Keep pointing at Andy at Gatwick, but we have been looking at some of these model validation requirements that the client's asking for. The client is asking, when we issue him models, what have we done? What is that supply chain doing to ensure that he's receiving decent information?
Yeah. And then the next one, you can have some software-specific BIM protocols. So if you're using Revit, of course this is Revit Forum, you're using Revit, so you capture some of the key work sets that everybody is aware that if you want to use them as a efficient workflow to work with other disciplines model, then you know what work sets you're working with projects.
Yeah.
The next one. This is another one. You're exporting your 2D drawings and 3D DWGs. What we have found in many cases that we receive 2D drawings and 3D DWGs exported from Revit, but then they don't have shared coordinates, or they have some lack of. Let's say if there is a project-wide layer convention, then they don't use the right layer export file, for example. Small things, but it does create a lot of problems. So it's useful to capture those things here. Model naming, again, you can
define it. Just define it. Don't talk about it here. Just define it.
Yeah. Softwares, again, capture the softwares that you're
2
using.
minutes.
Yep.
Go. Come on. Okay, define. Get that software platform. Everyone's. We're done.
Exchange. How you're exchanging models? Is it Econex, FTP, what have you? Again, define. And if you're exchanging, via...
Too slow.
Okay.
Last slide. Trying to get some KPIs. I quite like David's slide at the last meeting there on our aspirations for level 2 BIM, and you had your projects on the left hand side, and remember I asked you for it and you didn't reply. Yeah. Okay, right. But it's quite useful to try and understand what KPIs, so you can report back to your own business as to where this whole thing's going. Okay, so just to finish with a summary there of the steps, or should we shut down now? The kind of steps that we need to go through to put together our BIM execution plan. That's about it. Further sources of information in the UK there, and there is a whole rake of stuff available on BIM execution plan, not least the AEC work, which you've taken off, which is not very helpful, but the AEC, where is it?
UK one. In the UK.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, take it back.
Anzars mentioned execution plan.
That's it. Thank you very much. I think it's a useful discussion.
Just remains to say thank you to the speakers. Thank you to Carl and to Arabs for hosting the event this evening. Thank you to all of you for coming along. And we are now adjourning to the after-show party at
The Carpenters, which is just over there.
Carpenters, which we can see from here.